Good morning. Good morning, Your Worship, Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Bonjour, Monsieur le Maire, Vos Excellences, invités de marque, Mesdames et Messieurs. My name is Catherine Marion, and I have the distinct honor of being your Master of Ceremony this morning as we celebrate International Women's Day. Je m'appelle Catherine Marion et c'est avec grand honneur ce matin que je serai votre maîtresse de cérémonie alors que nous célébrons la Journée internationale de la femme. Thank you all for joining us this morning for this important celebration. I would like to extend a special welcome to today's guest speakers, Miss Louisa Taylor, Miss Sharon Nyangweso, I'm trying, I really am, and Miss Carla Briones. Thank you all for celebrating this occasion with us today. Before we begin, I wish to acknowledge that Ottawa is located on unceded territory of the Anishinaabe Algonquin Nation. I would like to honor the land and the peoples of the Anishinaabe Algonquin Nation whose ancestors have lived on this territory for millennia and whose culture and presence have nurtured and continue to nurture this land. Il est important de souligner que la ville d'Ottawa est située sur un territoire non cédé de la nation Anishinaabe-Algonquine. J'aimerais honorer les terres et les peuples de la nation Anishinaabe-Algonquine dont les ancêtres ont vécu sur ce territoire durant des millénaires et dont la culture et la présence ont enrichi et continuent d'enrichir ces terres. It is now my pleasure to invite His Worship, Mark Sutcliffe, Mayor of the City of Ottawa, to deliver his remarks. J'ai maintenant le plaisir d'inviter son honneur, M. Mark Sutcliffe, maire de la ville d'Ottawa, à prononcer son allocution. Mayor Sutcliffe.
Merci Catherine. Bonjour à toutes et à tous. Je tiens à vous remercier de vous être joints à nous ce matin pour célébrer la Journée internationale des femmes. C'est un honneur d'être parmi vous pour célébrer cette journée en tant que maire d'Ottawa et je tiens à remercier tout le monde ici présent de s'être joint à nous ce matin. Happy International Women's Day. I am so grateful that you are all here to celebrate, and we have a great program coming up for you this morning. And I want to say, I feel so lucky in my life and in my work to be surrounded by amazing women. And I look out at this group of people and I see the people that I get to work with at Ottawa City Hall, some amazing colleagues on Ottawa City Council, the wonderful leadership team that we have at the city. We have some great community leaders and business leaders who are with us today. We have a senator who's with us today. Great to see you, Senator Clement. And we have members of the diplomatic community. And it's actually quite amazing that the number of ambassadors to Canada from other countries who are women, many of whom are here today. And I'm very grateful for all the women I have in my life. My story kind of starts with my grandmother, who was born in Paris in 1905. And she was a fierce and independent woman, very Parisian. And she married a Chinese man in 1927, who she met in Paris. And I often think about how much courage that took. To marry the love of her life under those circumstances at that time. And then they moved to China, where she knew absolutely nobody. And she had 6 daughters, no sons, 6 daughters, 4 of whom survived infancy. And one of those was my mom. And they moved to Canada in 1950 and started all over again after fleeing communism in China. And so my grandmother was a great role model for me and for all the women in our family. And I think of her today. And I'm going to be asking our guests in a moment to share who they're thinking of and who has inspired them in their lives. But, you know, I think about all that my grandmother witnessed, all the change in her life, not just technological change, but social change over the course of her life. And we've made a lot of progress, but there is still so much more to be done. And so as we gather to celebrate International Women's Day and the advances that have been made in gender equity, I want to acknowledge, and I think we all want to acknowledge, that there remains a tremendous amount of work left to do. And we have to commit to that work not just today, but every single day. I see this as an opportunity to recognize and acknowledge where we've been, while also learning and growing to continue advancing the rights and inclusion of women. And to celebrate how far we've come, while also recognizing how much work remains to be done, we have a wonderful group of women who will be speaking today. I think I might be the only man you're hearing from during the program today. We will hear from Councillor Ariel Troster, who is our Council Liaison for Women, Gender Equity, and 2S LGBTQ+ Affairs. And thanks to Councillor Troster's initiative, this is the first time we've specifically included 2S LGBTQ+ Affairs in the Women and Gender Equity Liaison role. And Ariel has been a wonderful partner on so many initiatives that we have advanced already in our short time together as elected officials since we took office in November, and also a great partner in this event today. And Ariel is following in the footsteps of the first ever Council Liaison for Gender Equity, Teresa Kavanaugh, who is with us today as well. And we are also going to hear today from Wendy Stephenson, who is the interim city manager and the first person to sit in the city manager's office, the first woman to sit in the city manager's office since the amalgamation of the city of Ottawa. And I also want to take a moment to recognize the chief of staff in the mayor's office, who is also the first woman to hold that role since amalgamation, Robin Guest, who is here today, and who hates attention, but I'm giving her some anyway, because she's awesome. And following these remarks, we're going to hear from Ariel and from Wendy. We're going to have an armchair discussion with three trailblazers who are with us today. Louisa Taylor, co-founder and director of Refugee 613. Louisa and I worked together at the Ottawa Citizen a long time ago, but now everybody knows her for Refugee 613, which is an incredible grassroots project that works to inform and connect and inspire residents of Ottawa to improve the settlement and integration of refugees in our city. That is a cause that has never been more important than today, than right now. So, Louisa, thank you for being here. Sharon Nyangweso is the founder and CEO of Quake Lab, a full-stack inclusion and communications agency that specializes in a radical new approach to diversity and inclusion based in design thinking. Sharon, thank you for joining us today. And Carla Briones is an entrepreneur and consultant who leverages her experience to support BIPOC and underrepresented entrepreneurs grow and scale their businesses. Carla is an amazing entrepreneur. She is also an immigrant to Canada and has a really compelling and inspiring story, family story and her own story, and has been helping many immigrants to Canada start their own businesses. Carla, great to have you here as well. With this year's theme for International Women's Day being Embrace Equity, we are given an opportunity to examine what equity means in creating a more inclusive world. I know that our armchair discussion will bring tremendous insight into what embracing equity can mean in terms of supporting all women in our community, and I'm happy that each of you are here to share your thoughts and insights and expertise and wisdom today. International Women's Day is a celebration, but it is also a call to action. So I encourage everyone who is here today to continue to rally your friends, your family, your colleagues, your community to embrace equity. La Journée internationale des femmes est une célébration et un appel à l'action. Et j'encourage tout le monde à inciter leurs amis, leurs familles, leurs collègues et les membres de leur communauté à miser sur l'équité. Nous devons toutes et tous travailler ensemble pour changer positivement les choses et créer un monde équitable. We can, and indeed we must, work collectively to impact positive change, and together we can all help forge an equal world. So thank you all. It's very inspiring to see you all, to see all your faces here today, to know that you are behind this cause and committed to it, that we're all going to have an impact in creating change, the change that we need. So thank you all for being here today to celebrate International Women's Day. Merci à toutes et à tous d'être venus célébrer la Journée internationale de la femme. Merci beaucoup. Thank you.
Merci, Monsieur le Maire. We will now welcome remarks from Councillor Ariel Troster, the city's Council Liaison for Women, Gender Equity and 2S LGBTQ+ Affairs. Nous allons maintenant donner la parole à la conseillère Ariel Troster, agente de liaison du Conseil pour la condition féminine, l'équité des genres et les questions touchant la communauté 2S LGBTQ+.
Morning, everyone. As Mayor Sutcliffe mentioned, my name is Ariel Troster. I'm the Councillor for Somerset Ward here in downtown Ottawa and also the Council Liaison for Women, Gender Equity, and 2S LGBTQ+ Affairs. It is an honor to be here today with Mayor Sutcliffe, this room full of esteemed guests, elected officials, dignities, and community activists. And of course, our incredible guest speakers, Louisa Taylor, Carla Briones, and Sharon Nyangweso. The liaison role that I inhabit right now was held for the first time by Councillor Teresa Kavanagh, and I'm honored to follow her amazing legacy, also adding the 2S LGBTQ+ community to my focus. Because I strongly believe that when we view all of the ways we serve Ottawa residents through the lens of gender equity, we make a better city for everyone. That includes everything from public transit to social supports to housing to snow clearing. All of our services will improve when we put gender equity first. The theme of today's conversation is especially close to my heart because for the last 5 years, I've been part of an organization in Ottawa that's called Rainbow Haven, and I know some of the members of that group are here today, which works to sponsor and support 2S LGBTQ+ refugees and asylum seekers, most of whom are women. In fact, it was this experience that was a main motivation for me to run for City Council. Because through the lens of the refugees and asylum seekers we worked with, I was able to see the ways our city is helping people and the ways we're not. The biggest challenges when it came to helping women who are new to our country and our city were finding affordable housing and culturally appropriate mental health support. I've met gay and lesbian asylum seekers from Uganda who slept rough on our city streets when they first arrived here, and then in the shelter system, and now in apartments of their own. I saw firsthand how community services, when they are available, can uplift women out of extreme poverty and help launch them into a new and rewarding life in Ottawa. We see a lot on the news lately about the influx of asylum seekers due to the crushing impact of global conflict, poverty, and displacement. Women fleeing state-sponsored violence, queer and trans people fleeing homophobic and transphobic oppression, children fleeing war. My own daughter's elementary school recently reorganized its classes to accommodate 50 more children, all refugees living in hotel shelters nearby. As a city, this is an opportunity to show leadership in the global refugee crisis by ensuring that everyone who needs shelter and support can find it, especially women. According to the Homeless Hub, intimate partner violence is the leading cause of women's homelessness in Canada. I'm proud to say that as a City Council, we're taking important steps. We increased our capital spending on affordable housing by more than $1 million this year, and we also developed a roadmap to quickly transition overflow shelters into permanent supportive housing. And as we set our strategic direction for the rest of this term of council, I can assure you I will advocate for housing and social supports for women to be at the top of that list. Conversations like the one we will hear today allow us to dream bigger about how we can build a city where no woman is left behind. I celebrate all of you here in today's audience who are working hard to honor and support women in our city. Happy International Women's Day to all of you who fight for bread but surely deserve roses. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Troster. Merci beaucoup. It is my pleasure to invite Ms. Wendy Stephenson, the City of Ottawa's Interim General Manager and the first female City Manager, to deliver her remarks.
Much, Catherine, and good morning, everyone. Bonjour tout le monde. C'est un plaisir d'être ici avec vous. Many thanks to Mayor Sutcliffe and Councillor Troster for their inspiring words, and as we celebrate International Women's Day today. I want to thank today's guest speakers. We've got Louisa Tiller, I don't know if you've all been introduced, this is your third time, Sharon Nyangweso and Carla Briones for joining us today and for sharing their experiences with us. I'm really looking forward to hearing the conversation this morning. And of course, I wish everybody here a very happy International Women's Day. Je suis sûre à tous une heureuse journée internationale des femmes. It's such a wonderful representation today of not only women leaders from across all sectors of our community, but also our allies and our supporters. Merci à toutes et à tous d'être ici avec nous. It's quite amazing to think that all people in all organizations around the world are taking the time today to recognize International Women's Day and reflect on what it truly means to them in their communities and to them personally. International Women's Day provides us with an opportunity to celebrate social, economic, cultural, and political achievements of women. In addition, the day also marks a call to action for accelerating gender parity and raising awareness about women's equality and equity. And I was fortunate yesterday to attend Councillor Curry's International Women's Day breakfast, and along with Mayor Sutcliffe, one of the messages that I delivered was the importance of all of us working together as a team, achieving gender equity and equality in our communities. We all have a role to play, and together we must keep that momentum going to advance gender equity across our communities. Nous avons toutes et tous un rôle à jouer, et ensemble nous devons poursuivre pour cette lancée et continuer à mettre de l'avant l'équité des gens dans l'ensemble et de nos communicateurs. One of the things I really wanted to share this morning about is how proud I am to work for an organization that places a significant amount of significance and importance on women and gender equity. And we're hearing today about the advancements about being made both externally with our city's residents and our clients, as well as internally with our staff through our Women and Gender Equity Strategy. Et nous continuerons de travailler sur cette recommandation. And I would like to recognize and thank Councillor Ariel Troster, who, as the Council Liaison for Women, Gender Equity, and 2SLGBQ+ affairs, will be leading that critical work. Thank you, Councillor, for doing that and taking that on. And also tell you that the City of Ottawa prides itself on having strong representation of women in leadership roles, as well as in non-traditional roles. And we also ensure that women have robust representation as candidates in our succession plan. This is an area in the city where we've made tremendous C'est un secteur où nous avons réalisé d'énormes progrès à titre d'organisation. And just a little bit of background about myself. I've been fortunate to work for the city for more than 25 years, getting experience in a number of roles across the organization, working my way, I'm going to say, across and up the organization. And I've had the opportunity to see where we've come from and where it comes to the advancement of women. And prior to being named the first female city manager, or interim city manager, more than a few months ago, a role that I've been truly honored to serve, I've had the opportunity to work in several leadership roles, and most recently as Chief Financial Officer. And as I've moved throughout my career with the City of Ottawa, I've experienced this change firsthand. I've seen the increasing number of women take on leadership roles, and it's really been an inspiration to me and to others across the organization. The more people see this change and have these women as role models in our city, the more encouraging it is for women to start to explore the possibility of taking on a leadership role themselves. It's a really positive trend, and I'm so pleased to tell you that we're so fortunate to have exceptional women doing outstanding work at all the departments at the City of Ottawa. Je suis heureuse de vous dire que nous avons la chance d'avoir des femmes exceptionnelles qui font un travail dans toutes les directions générales à la ville d'Ottawa. We're so fortunate to have strong women leaders around our senior leadership table, making up close to 50% of our extended leadership team. That membership is from the director level or higher. And if you look at some of the numbers that we have in our departments across the city, there's a significant number of staff that are women. A few examples include our Community and Social Services Department, where women make up 78% of the staff. Our Office of the City Clerk is represented by 56%. Our Educational, Culture, Facility Services Department has close to 52%, as well as our Finance and Corporate Services Department with close to 48%. Of role models, I want to close today by giving you a little insight as to who I strive to be a role model for. I'm very lucky to have two amazing nieces. One of them is in high school, and the second one is doing her post-secondary studies. It's really important for me to be a strong model for them, a role model that demonstrates that women are capable of amazing things. As women leaders think that one of the most critical things we can do is to... Que femme leader, je pense que c'est l'une des choses les plus essentielles que nous pouvons faire inspirer la prochaine génération. As I mentioned earlier, there's so many incredible leaders in this room today with so much exceptional experience. I want to leave you all thinking about your own personal commitment to help. And when I was out chatting with people before we came in here this morning, I heard a couple of things about some of women's experiences in the workplace. And sorry, Claudette, I am going to call you out by name. I was talking about my mom's experience, and I actually brought this up yesterday when I was at Councillor Curry's breakfast. It's just shocking. When my mom began her career, she was a teacher. And when she became pregnant, she had to quit her job. Which is just so different in terms of the experience that we had today. And when I was speaking with Claudette, Claudette was indicating that when she went for a job interview, she was newly engaged and had to take her engagement ring off in order to present herself fairly and well and get the job. And I just want to say, I'm going to leave you all with a quote that I have. Thank you to those who have forged the way for women and inspired women to be leaders. And thank you for those who will continue to forge. And I'm going to leave you with this morning. And I'm going to apologize because whoever was at breakfast yesterday also heard this. But this is my final thought. And it says, when inspiring to see how far women have come, it's important to remember that there is still a long journey ahead of us. Just as we celebrate the first from history, we're working to make sure that many follow in their footsteps. Again, I wish you all a very happy International Women's Day. Thank you. Merci beaucoup.
you, Ms. Stephenson, for those inspirational remarks. And speaking of inspiration, they have been graciously introduced already today on a couple of occasions. And so I'm going to reintroduce them very briefly. We have on today's panel, Louisa. We have Sharon Nyangweso. And we also have Carla Briones. His Worship Mark Sutcliffe is going to lead us in an engaging discussion with these special guests. Mr. Sutcliffe.
So I mentioned earlier the story of my grandmother, who very much inspired. But I'd ask each of you to share a story of a woman who has inspired you. I'm sure you have lots to choose from, but Carla, did you want to go first?
It's funny because you were mentioning your story, and I was like, you stole it, because my inspiration.
Do we have the same grandmother?
Well, no.
Oh, okay.
She'd be in trouble. No. So my grandmother, so Carmela Tenes, and why she's so inspirational to me is because she was born in Colombia, in Latin America, in extreme poverty, and she lived in an abusive home, unfortunately. And when she was 16, there was a bullfighting crew that came to her town, and she fell in love with the art of bullfighting. And they invited her actually to join them to the next stop, which was in Mexico. And she had to lie about her age. She ended up actually going with them to Mexico and stayed in Mexico and became Mexico's first female bullfighter on a horse.
Wow.
Which is unreal. So she fled her abusive home, went to Mexico, established herself as a bullfighter, and then ended up traveling around the world eventually to buy things from China, from India, from Thailand, clothes to bring back to Mexico and sell in her store. Had 3 daughters, never married, was a matriarch, put my mom and my aunts through school, and eventually she ended up in Ottawa. And she's living in a retirement residence. She did all of this without a word of English. Still, she doesn't speak English. And tomorrow is her 88th birthday.
Wow.
So yeah, I see myself in her, and just so inspirational. Just such an amazing, amazing trailblazer.
Incredible. Yeah. Thank you, Carla. Thank you. Sharon?
I'm not sure if you all know, but my name is Sharon. It hasn't been mentioned yet. That's an interesting question because I think, like, you both shared, there's so many women that you can choose that I can choose to talk about being sort of inspiring figures in my life. So from one end of my family, I technically am only the second generation of literate women. From the other end of my family, my great-grandmother had to educate her kids in the park because of the colonial government at the time. And so there's many to pick from, but I like to think of it, when I think of women who have inspired me, I like to think not so much of the things that they have suffered, and to glorify the suffering of women. We tend to so in a strange way, I'm going to look to the future and say that the women that inspire oh, well, there's this TikTok star who's got really great dances, or, there's this one girl who makes shoes out of, I don't know, like cupcakes, my hope is that the women that will inspire me in the future will have the choice to be privileged, casual and rested and well.
Wonderful. Oh.
I couldn't pick just one. I love the rested idea. And that kind of ties into, for me, on a daily basis, the women who inspire me are the women, not just on my team, several of whom are here today, but also in partner organizations, people choose to work in a sector like the nonprofit. also hope that the women of the future are going to, be but daily, inspirational, getting.
Can you talk a bit more about what you've been witnessing recently? We've been through the time that Refugee 613 has been in existence. We've been crises, and your work and your team. The gender lens to the experiences that you.
I would say that it's you don't even have to go look. Women, and particularly women of color, or women. Get here, number one, so a woman who. Amazing that they've even made it here. And then once they're here, it's good enough for most, and then people are. I was in this council chamber and spoke in that experience. I thought I knew the city. That experience, when you walk beside someone who is new to the city,
A lot of them end up in service-based industries, again, supporting vulnerable people within the city. Talk about change, when we talk about impact that can be made and marking days like today, I think we've been doing this. I'm sure many of you have attended events like this for 10 years now, and we often talk about change, and sometimes that practical aspect is missing, and we cannot ignore that what gets funded is what isn't. First funded spaces in the city, and again, knocked down insurmountable barriers to get here in the first place. Folks think to be an immigrant is you show up to the airport, they're like, here's citizenship and keys to a house. And hop on in. And then you end up in a service industry where you are constantly going to be underpaid, constantly going to be dominantly been made up of former immigrants, or former refugees. If we're only trying to get folks to not starve to death, that is a ceiling that we need to move way up, so that we're also going to thrive. And I'm a hand talker at my point.
Carla, can you just share a bit of your own experience of coming to Canada? What you hope for say the next generation of women entrepreneurs?
So I came to Canada when I was 18 from Mexico. And it's very interesting you say, Louisa, that when the best way to experience the city is through the lens of somebody that is new, or somebody who's a newcomer, and for the deficiencies of the city, but also for the beauty of the city, and for the opportunities that exist in this country that may not necessarily have existed in the countries that we're originally from. So there's a plus and a minus. So when I came to Canada, I am also from journalism school, actually. I did journalism, and eventually my father, a veterinarian doctor, he couldn't practice health profession. It took him a long time to revalidate his license, and then eventually opened up his veterinary practice, which took a long, long time of underemployment, selling gas contracts from door to door, selling life insurance, all of these menial jobs in order to get to where he really wanted to go. We lived this close to becoming homeless. We live this close to accessing, the amazing services that the city of Ottawa has to offer, but my dad is a very proud man. So he worked tirelessly to put food on the table. I worked 3 part-time jobs while I was in university to help food on the table, and all of those experiences gave me an understanding of what it's like to be an immigrant, what it's like to be an immigrant who wants to open a business, and the difficulties that there may be. So about 5 years ago, it wasn't really out of the blue, but it was a point in moment when my dad sold his business, and because of some mistakes that he made when he started the business, he had to backtrack 13 years worth of accounting. Anyway, so it was a very expensive affair to actually sell his business and almost put his entire. That's when I realized, oh my God, and he's one of the lucky. I wonder how many other immigrant entrepreneurs or who want to open businesses that don't get the help that my dad didn't get either, make terrible mistakes and end up losing their nest egg, end up losing and not really go after their dreams, or their dreams stay very small because they don't know who to connect with, they don't know what services are available. And that's what I decided to start doing. I have businesses of my own. Eventually I went into entrepreneurship and acquired all of this knowledge, and I kind of thought to myself, well, this knowledge is great for me, but it's probably way better if I share it with other people that have come. That's what I've started to do. I've started to share knowledge, to share my networks, to share my experience so that the next generation of newcomers don't have to go alone, particularly women. In the pandemic, we saw immigrant women and marginalized women being disproportionately affected by the pandemic, but something amazing happened as well, is that this community, these women, disproportionately started opening businesses as well, because underemployment or them losing their job was, and being left without an income was not an option for them. So I saw dozens in the Ottawa area, dozens and dozens of courageous immigrant women who went back to the drawing board and said, how can I provide to my family? Well, I know how to bake. I know how to cook. I know how to sew. I know how, using their skills as a mean for self-employment, and finding a community or finding somebody who would help them get to the next level, and you want to sew, okay, why don't you get another person? Why don't you get another person to help you get bigger? So it was really cool. It wasn't cool, the underemployment and the disproportionate struggles that they were going through, but it was so cool for them to say, failure is not an option. I'm not going to be sitting around waiting for handouts. How can I help my family by using the skills that I have through self-employment? So there are many, many, many courageous people, and just the energy that those from marginalized communities, particularly immigrants, because they're close to my heart, the energy that they have it's incredible. And some of these women have gone to now scale their businesses. They're selling their bread. They started in a farmer's market. Becky, for example, she started in a farmer's market. She's from Lagos, Nigeria. And you probably have seen her. She's in the Harp Farmer's Market, and she's selling the sweet bread. And now she's distributing to different retailers across Ottawa. And she has offers from Toronto to start wholesaling. So it goes to show the importance of providing that equity of your knowledge and your networks and your contacts to those people that come knocking. To provide your knowledge, to provide your networks, introduce them to key people. Those key people are great for you and for your own network, but they're better if you share them. And it's the power of working together for a better future, and to give others opportunities that you may not have had in the past, but there's no reason why they can't have them in the future. And I'm rambling because I'm so passionate about this, but.
Carla. So I want to talk for a moment about the change that we want to see, and I think we have. I think the discussion has evolved over time. I think there was a time when the discussion was around how do we remove barriers and obstacles and give everybody an equal opportunity, and then I learned since then that we need to do more than that. We need systems that are barriers in themselves, right? It's not starting line, it's about the path after that and how often it's been biased. It comes to things like entrepreneurship or how workplaces are structured or work days and all of those issues. What kinds of changes do you think we need to make, Sharon?
I don't answer this well.
I'll
start spending it on my resume. But so I particularly love that shift from equality to equity because it recognizes that we are not all starting at the same point. And not only that, but the intentionality of the systems that have been built to remove us. I'll start by giving a sort of stark example, but one that I love because it really drives it home. I talk about inequity in financial systems. So we'll start in 2020. Around 2020, I think it was, the City of Toronto released a report, a really excellent report. It talked about how Black women and Indigenous women were less likely to receive, entrepreneurs were less likely to receive any type of funding, business funding, be it grants, loans, VC funding, anything. And they were talking about specifically within financial systems, so banks. Now, when we think, well, how did that happen? Why is this happening? And we can start to investigate. Now, I put on my work hat on, and I think that during the formation of what we know now as Canada, the United States, it is not surprising that it's difficult for me as a Black business owner to get a loan, because when we were forming, not only would I not get a loan, I was the currency. So if you have that through line, you can't tell me that the foundation of a thing and where we are today are not related. So if we're talking about what do we do next, I think first and foremost, we need to establish the ways in which the systems that we navigate right now were built for a very small group of people, many of whom, I don't see the faces of in here. And things have changed so rapidly that we are now taking up that space, but these systems, they are yet to be built for us. And in fact, they are in conflict with our presence. And I think coming to terms with that sort of, I guess let's call it the roots, coming to terms with that. And also coming to terms with how it's laid out here, what the far-reaching tentacles look like now. And that includes, the ways in which in this city, I think in the last, I want to say few years, a number of Indigenous women have gone missing. About how in the city, we often try and measure ourselves against the United States, which is kind of like saying I don't smell bad because I don't smell like poop. But like trans women in the city, you don't have to walk too far downtown Ottawa to see transphobic posters. You don't have to walk too far to see posters of missing Indigenous women. And again, this is not happenstance. It is intentional. And so if inequity, if structural racism and sexism and ableism are intentional, then it only serves that our dismantling of that also needs to be intentional. It's not about how you feel. It's not about, I believe women. It's not about, this emotive action. It's about intentionality. It's about looking at what exists here, doing the really, messy work of digging and saying, who is this built for? Who does it not serve? And I don't mean that in a theoretical way. I mean, for instance, in the work that I do with my team, we practically try and we source data. What do we know about, what data exists about this space? Which, by the way, now that I have the pleasure of having all the councillors and the mayor in this room, please, for the love of God, let us start collecting disaggregated data. Please, for the love of God. We can say, I so appreciate, for instance, the interim city manager. Congratulations, by the way. You came in and mentioned all of these women who are staffing the city. And I want to know, that's wonderful. But let us have the breakdown of these women. How many of them are disabled? Yes. How many of them are immigrants? Yes. How many of them are women of color? How many of them are trans women?
Yes.
Let us start collecting disaggregated data, because then we will actually see who is this made for, who is it not made for, who is winning, who is not, and what do we need to dismantle, and then we don't.
Sharon. Lisa, I'm interested in your perspective on this because you're obviously working in a space where gender equity is a huge issue, but you're also leading an organization, workplace, and I've been to that workplace. I've talked to many community leaders and business owners who, many of whom are here today, who are really struggling with how to provide an environment where women can succeed. Up to a woman, but we're also going to create the conditions that will allow that woman to be successful and not run into
build on Sharon's point, which is that as much as I try to do on a micro level, I very quickly butt up against the systemic challenges. Underfunding of social services, and so salaries are too low. They're kept very. I'm surrounded by dynamic, smart, accomplished women, and they deserve to be paid more, but my funder will not allow that. So I can do, I'll answer your question in a second, but I just want to say, to tap into Sharon's point about the structural issues that are hard even when you're trying to do what you can at a micro level. It's really simple things, and to me it's just trying to treat everyone that I work with as a human being. Dreams and obligations and experiences that are outside the 9 to 5. And so, I like to think, and they can tell us if I've got it wrong, but I like to think that my staff knows they need to get something done for their family. It's not even I accommodate that 100%. For a long time, we were 99. We let a few men in more recently, I have women. We're a very flat organization, so we're small. We're 20 people right now, which is huge. But the women I'm working with, if they want to try. Common experience for me to have a really well-loved member of staff come to me quite emotional and say, I can't stay. I need to go and find. But I will say one of the things that I think about every day is the fact that I am. So a dream of mine has been to get our organization stable enough. I move out of my position, and it is led by someone stable enough that I have felt like I'm handing over, I'm setting someone up for success. And I think that theme of, saying, okay, we have to have a woman in this position, and we have to advance. But not making sure that you are giving them every possible chance of success. But where politicians, Sutcliffe, thank you, setting women up for leadership positions, but you're passing them a disaster, right? And I think that I have seen that happen to friends of mine in this sector, and I have seen how, once again, so to me, it's about thinking very intentionally about the people. Great previous career, I am overly burdensome obligations in the rest of my life, and I'm able to. But are there times that I need to step aside because of someone else in the sector? Maybe it's one of the people. So it's both macro and micro on an individual. Over and over for those opportunities to
come. So you're not just saying it, like it's that actionable.
Thank you, Louisa. Carla, I'm interested in your thoughts on this as, based on your own experience and now as, you've started businesses, you've hired people, and business, there's specific working hours that you're open, and how do you manage the challenges of getting an environment where women can be successful?
Yeah, so intentionality, I think that's sort of the key word of this morning, is being intentional on what you want to provide, what you want to offer to key staff or key people, to allow them to be great at their job, and to also be great as family, as members of their own family. But I really wanted to touch on the intentionality of women entrepreneurs and what it takes to support women entrepreneurs. And it takes intentionality. And like Sharon said, don't just look at the number of the percentage of women that, that we are supporting to become entrepreneurs. Let's go in deeper and see the makeup of that group. What are their intersectionalities, and are we really, really going for being as equitable as possible, right? So being equality is giving everybody a shoe. Equity is giving everyone a shoe that fits. So how are we going to provide women programs, funding, mentorship, and so on and so forth for them, in my case, to grow their businesses in a way that it works for them? And when you take a look at the different programs that are available, the different incubators, accelerators, funding that is available, yeah, there is a lot for women, but there is a lot of money for a very small sector, which is the technology sector. When in reality, women make up a big majority of the small business, traditional type of businesses that are still huge businesses. In my experience, I know immigrant women who owns a multi-million-dollar translation company who wants to keep growing but can't, because she can't access any of the accelerators because they don't target her industry. The same with somebody else that has a coffee company, and that just doesn't fit in what the funding is available or the programs that are available in local economic development agencies. So I think we have to really be intentional about pushing boundaries and about being more inclusive, not just in gender, but also in intersectionalities and in terms of business, also in terms of the intersectionalities between the different countries. That's what I've seen, and that's what I would love to see. I would love to see that change.
So I'm sorry to say we're right out of time, but any very quick final thoughts from each of you on?
A lot of people here are doing a lot, but it's the equity lens on everything we do.